Contained in these pages are my observations of the bizarre creatures that have appeared on Carnate Island since the cataclysm struck. The creatures emerge in a variety of ways, but many of them appear to come from within the island itself, as if the very earth of Carnate were poisonous and vile. Though I scarcely have time to keep a journal like this, trying to keep myself alive, my inquisitive nature forces me to write down what I see, in the hope that I might better understand it. But how can this unspeakable horror possibly be understood? It is as if Carnate's horrific sins, both past and present, are being brought to life in a pageant of death. Slayer, I first witnessed these creatures jumping out of the ground itself. Their heads were detached from their torsos, held aloft by hideous contraptions. Their limbs have been replaced by blades of the sharpest steel. To my eyes, they appear to be a manifestation of decapitation. Yet it seems improbable anyone ever had their head chopped off an abbot. I suppose on Carnate anything is possible. I have dubbed these monstrosities slayers. Marksman. Based on the battery of rifles attached to its back and the blindfold around its head, this marksman appears to be the reincarnation of a military firing squad. Abbott was originally a POW camp during World War II, so it seems likely they would have had executions of that sort. Indeed, there are stories of a rogue colonel who was to be court-martialed but instead took his own life. Perhaps he is connected to these abominations. Mainliner. In the 1970s, lethal injection was introduced as the most humane means of state-sanctioned killing. To date, 25 such procedures have taken place in Abbott. This creature, I call him the Mainliner, appears to suffer with every move he makes. Perhaps the mixture of sodium pentothal, pancuronium bromide, and potassium chloride in his veins is not to his liking. The numerous needles jabbed into his body cannot help his disposition. Nooseman. Not only is this Nooseman dead from being hung by the neck, but he also appears to have had his skin removed. I wonder if these creatures are tied to the legendary story of the inmates who, outraged by the death of fellow workers in a quarry mining accident, hung and skinned 5 COs. The Noosemen are more supernatural than many of their brethren, ripping themselves straight out of the ceiling in some entirely impossible manner. Burrower. These burrowers are some of the most lethal creatures I have encountered, primarily due to their ability to spring forth from the ground itself and just as quickly re-submerge. They're closely tied to the very soil of Carnate. A theme among these monstrosities. Its appearance is of a human body tied up in a gunny sack and constrained by leather straps, with deadly steel chains attached to various locations. I believe they represent those buried alive. Fester. Continually emerging from the slave ship, these are the festering creatures who foil my attempts to escape this confounded rock. Rats live within their flesh, writhing within it and then springing forth randomly. They appear to be a reincarnation, not of the slaves, for then they would be of darker skin tone, but instead of the slave traders. In this form, they are forced to live out again and again the fate they forced upon those hapless slaves. Inferna. From what I have witnessed, this manifestation of evil appears to have two distinct forms. The first, a young girl in Puritan dress, perhaps 13 years of age. This transforms into an altogether more disturbing flaming creature. Both clutch a small handmade doll. To my mind, there is no doubt that these creatures are tied to the three young girls who made witchcraft accusations in the late 1600s and led to the incendiary death of 11 innocents. Dr. Killjoy. One of Abbott's most persistent legends tells of Dr. Killjoy, the quite insane psychiatrist-surgeon who ran an asylum on Carnate. Doing research of my own, I found that he did indeed exist, though which stories are true and which are fabrication is anyone's guess. Since the cataclysm, I have 3 times seen a surgeon formed of pure light, reminiscent of 16mm film projection come to life. Could this be the fine doctor?
It's up to you now.
Horus. Many inmates break once inside Abbott, but none have snapped more extremely than Horace Gage, who, the tale goes, became convinced his wife wasn't safe without his protection and sliced her to ribbons during a conjugal visit. He ended up in the mercy chair, electrocuted by Abbott's then executioner Hermes Hates. For years, inmates have said he haunts Abbott, and I believe I saw him 10 minutes ago. I surely wish I had not. Hermes. Since the cataclysm, I have several times found myself mysteriously surrounded by noxious green fumes. I have fled in each case, and I think if I had not, I might not be alive to write this now. Within the gas, I have seen a humanoid who seemed to take great joy in the prospect of my death. Could this be Hermes, Abbott's resident executioner for several decades? If I recall, he took his own life in the gas chamber. I only briefly saw this enormous creature a single time, near the docks. I cannot even begin to describe him, save for one thing. He seems to be quite literally connected to an inmate, the convicted killer Torque. Incredible as it may sound, this creature appears to have a miniature version of Torque attached to him via a long umbilicus. Beyond that, I can only say that I view him as the most evil of all the creatures, a pure manifestation of fury and hatred. Torque's family. In one of my other entries, I discussed Torque, the notorious inmate who seems at ease dispatching these creatures. I recall seeing in the Sun a picture of the man's ex-wife and 2 boys, and I have drawn it here from memory. I remember they were a beautiful family, and it seems unbelievable that any man so blessed would have the audacity to kill them so savagely. But as we all know, beauty alone is often not enough. Torque. Since the cataclysm, I have seen the death of many inmates. But one seems to be an unstoppable survivor. I've seen him take out packs of marksmen and slayers without even breathing hard. Torque is an inmate of some ill repute, having been sentenced to die for the killing of his ex-wife and children. Of course, being convicted and being guilty are 2 different things. Perhaps he will save us all, but I feel certain he will at least save himself. The creature. I saw this creature in a dream, and he seems somehow connected to these horrific events. In my dream, I witnessed the inmate Torque transform into this beast and lay waste to all around him. Since the cataclysm, I have seen Torque go berserk, killing beasts with his bare hands. But of course, during such times, he himself does not actually transform into a beast. He merely becomes intensely enraged. The meaning of my dream I leave for the reader to discern.